صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل
عظم
فرجهم.
الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بسيدنا ومولانا موسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وجعلنا الله وإياكم من الطالبين بثأره بين يدي الإمام المنصور المؤيد المهدي من آل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى روحك وبدنك الطاهرة. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ما خاب من تمسك بكم سادتي، وأمن من تمسك بكم. يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: والكاظمين الغيظ. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
A second salawat in honor of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kaظم, Bab al-Hawa'ij, with your loudest voices.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
A third salawat in honor of the Imam of our time and to hasten his reappearance, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, with your loudest of voices.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
It is on this night
من الأولين
of the month of Rajab we observe the martyrdom anniversary of a door from the doors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Babun min abwabillah, Babul Hawa'ij. Allah, it is none other than Al-Imam Musa al-Kaظم salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. Al-Imam al-Kaظم alayhi salam plays a pivotal role in the life and legacy of the message and timeline of Islam Ahlul Bayt. Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam shows us that despite your circumstances, whether you're restricted in the confines of the most difficult, arduous, tantamonious circumstance, like the prisons of Harun al-Rashid, despite that, you can be a light shining in the deepest dungeons in Baghdad. And Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam shows us that no matter how restricted and confined you are and can be, you are still obligated to show and teach knowledge. Indeed, Imam Musa al-Kaظm, Abu Ali al-Rida, salawatullahi alayhima, shows us that despite him being confined to the jail and that prison where he was still a fountain of knowledge for all those who are thirsty to gain and drink from that same fountain. But he shows us this in a creative manner, because when you want to spread and share knowledge, alhamdulillah, we are blessed to have access online. We are blessed to have education centers, Husayniyat, masajid, institutions, universities. But this shows us from the example of Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam that no matter what situation you are in, whether you're in a country that has banned women to go to an education, or in a restricted area, no institution near you, there is still a need to show and disseminate ilm from the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was none other than his own son, Al-Imam al-Rida, who said, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ عِلْمَانِ عِلْمُ الْأَدْيَانِ وَعِلْمُ الْأَبْدَانِ. Knowledge can be divided in many parts, but it can be divided in the knowledge of deen, adyan. Adyan is multiple, deen is wahid, adyan is jami'. And he shows abdan, anatomy, biology, all these other sciences. Ahlul Bayt encourage all of you, go and learn. طلب العلم فريضة على كل مؤمن ومؤمنة. And we see this emphasized so much and so insistingly that even when you are restricted in the worst conditions and prisons, Imam al-Kaظm showed us that that is not an excuse. You can still learn and you can still give knowledge. We notice that Imam Musa al-Kaظm was raised in a household that absolutely emphasized knowledge. His father, being the founder of our madhab, the founder of our deen, is none other than Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
But the founder of our madhab, our school of thought, is the father of Imam al-Kaظm, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And he grew up in an era where you found the beginning of what history and Western academia calls the Islamic Golden Age. This was a time of Banu al-Abbas rising into power after the demise of Banu Umayyah. They began to translate ancient, if you read Muruj al-Dhahab of al-Dhahabi, ancient Greek text. Plato's Republic, for example, was translated from the ancient ancient Greek to the Arabic. We don't have any original manuscripts of that work. We have the Arabic, which was translated in the era of Al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi. It was in that time period. There was an emphasis on knowledge and ilm. The main Sunni schools of thought emerged at that time period. We had Abu Hanifa emerged at that time period. You had Malik ibn Anas, the Maliki Imam, emerged. His student, Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i, his student, Ahmad ibn Hanbal. This was a time period where it was a matter of let's learn and gain ilm. But despite that, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam showed you and us all together that knowledge starts with the family first. You can't begin to teach others if you yourself are corrupted, if you have priorities at home. And this is exactly what the Quran shows us. And there's no surprise. إِنِّي تَارِكُمْ فِيكُمْ وَالثَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَعِتْرَةِ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي. They combine the actions of the Quran. Why? Allah says in the Holy Quran, لَا يُغَيِّرُ اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will never change a nation until they begin having self-reform, self-change. Imam al-Sadiq, before he became the Imam of the Ja'fari school of thought, as he is rightfully known, of course, madahib and sects here and there, these are just names to distinguish the followers of Rasulullah who held on to his will, the thaqalain. Otherwise, our deen is Islam, nothing more, nothing less. But we distinguish ourselves by holding on to the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt. That title was given to us by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He began by showing you in your own house, watch this. Number one, my daughters will all be scholars. That's why it's no surprise his granddaughter, Imam Musa al-Kaظm's daughter, became Fatima al-Ma'suma. We're buried right now, we all know, inshallah, visited Ma'suma Qum. A scholar. She is one of the narrators of Hadith al-Ghadir. And she narrates it in a beautiful way. Observe the following. She says, my name is Fatima, the daughter of Imam Musa al-Kaظm. I heard from Fatima, the daughter of my grandfather Ja'far al-Sadiq, who heard from Fatima, the daughter of Al-Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, who heard from Fatima, the daughter of whom? From his mother rather. His mother, Muhammad al-Baqir's mother, her name is Fatima, bint al-Hasan, who heard from Fatima, the daughter of the Holy Prophet of Islam's granddaughter, Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. From her daughters, she had the Zainabs, Zainab al-Sughra, Wusta Ukhra. Then who heard from Fatima al-Zahra that on the day of Ghadir Khum, Rasulullah raised the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen and he said very loud, فَمَنْ كُنْتُ مَوْلَى فَهَذَا عَلِيٌّ مَوْلَى. The daughters and granddaughters of Imam al-Sadiq and Imam Musa al-Kaظm were fadilat, alimat, grand scholars, faqihat in their era. He then showed us that even with your own spouses, do not limit the pursuing of ilm and knowledge. His wife, Imam Musa al-Kaظm's mother, Hamida al-Barbariya, from the North African region, the Berber Amazighi region, and another name she has, Hamida al-Andalusiya, from the Spanish Spain region. Of at that time, Islam has not reached Spain, and she came to the Muslim land as a captive. When that happened, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam married her. From her, he had Imam Musa al-Kaظم. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam had 10 children with this one woman, Hamida, and he began to teach her and instruct her the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such that Imam al-Sadiq called her Hamida al-Musafat, Hamida the purified one. Tasfiya, Safi, means to be pure. My wife is that way. And she would then teach the other women of Kufa at that time. When you are a child, you're growing up in this circumstance. Your father is Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq. Your mother is Hamida the pure, Musafat. Don't be too surprised, you become the one known as Babun min Abwabillah, Babul Hawaiji, the gate of needs. If you have any desires and needs, you can go through Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam. One day, Abu Hanifa al-Nu'mani, the Imam of the Hanafi school of thought, currently buried in Baghdad next to Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam. From the Imam of the Sunni world, he came to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and he wanted to ask him a question. He was a student of Imam al-Sadiq. He studied under him for 2 years. His full name is Abu Hanifa al-Nu'mani. And so he has a famous saying, لولا السنتان لهلك النعمان. Had it not been for the 2 years I studied under Ja'far al-Sadiq, I and Nu'man would have perished. These were invaluable years I spent under him. He came to ask from his teacher, Imam al-Sadiq, a number of questions. Imam al-Sadiq apparently was busy with a few things. He then approached the young Imam al-Kaظm. He was about 5 years old. He said to him, "Oh Abu Hanifa, my father is busy right now. But if you have any questions, feel free to direct them at me." The alim Abu Hanifa was a scholar. He says, "You're a really young boy. These questions are too big for you. Let me see your father." He said, "I told you he's busy, but let's try. Test me, challenge me. What do you have to ask?" He said, "These are aqaidi questions, theological questions." I don't know if you even know what aqaid is. Imam al-Kaظm, about 5 years old, says, "Go ahead." He said and asked the following. He says, "Okay, as-sayyi'atu min man? Where does evil derive from? أهل من عند الله? Does it derive from Allah when you see evil? Is that Allah allowing it to play its role? Or is it from the creation, independent from Allah? Or is it involved with Allah and the creation? So because Allah allowed you to make evil, Allah is responsible and you are responsible. Or is only Allah responsible because Allah knows what's going to happen, so Allah technically is the only one responsible? Or is it you independent from Allah? As-sayyi'atu min man? Where does evil come from?" You would think a 5-year-old boy would be like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." Imam al-Kaظm replied using the Quran and the aql, the logic and the Holy Quran. He replied like this: "First of all, evil can only come from the creation of Allah." Why? Because Allah says in Surah Al-Falaq, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allah says what? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that Bismillah ar-Rahman, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. I seek refuge to the Lord of the Falaq, from the evil of the creation that He created. Not مِنْ شَرِّهِ, or مِنَ الشَّرِّ الَّذِي خَلَقَ. مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ, from the evil of the creation He made. Allah didn't make evil, He made creation that is capable of evil. Therefore Allah is not the source of evil, but the creation. And then He responded, this is a matter of free will and predestination. And it is a matter, إِنَّمَا هِيَ أَمْرٌ بَيْنَ أَمْرَيْنِ. And it's a matter in 2 cases. There is free will in life, and there is predestination. You decide what you want to make your life decision, where you want to go, where you want to head. But you never got to decide where you were born. That was predetermined. You don't decide who your parents are. Allah predetermined that. But Allah does allow you to make decisions after those situations here. And so, إِنَّمَا هِيَ أَمْرٌ بَيْنَ أَمْرَيْنِ. It's a case between these 2 cases. As a result, Allah and evil are independent, and the creation can make evil. The man, Abu Hanifa, looked at him and he says, "How on earth did you come up with this? Ya subhanallah, I called you a young boy, rather I should address you as a shaykh min shuyukh al-Muslimin, from the scholars of the Muslims." He observed the ilm Imam al-Kaظm had to show at a young age of about 5 years old. Now when Imam al-Kaظm grew in the household of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and his pious mother, eventually it came to the point where Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he had 10 children, we mentioned. 7 were boys and 3 were females. And from these, the oldest was Abdullah, hence Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq. We hear his name in the ahadith. The second is a young man by the name of Ismail, who eventually the Ismaili sect took as the Imam after Imam al-Sadiq, not Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam. That's why if you go today to Iraq and do ziyarah, inshallah, razaqanallahu wa iyyakum, ziyarat a'immat Ahlul Bayt, you will find the Ismaili Bohra, they do ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, but you won't see them in Qalam, because Imam al-Qalam is not the next Imam. It's Ismail, son of Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. They'll visit out of respect, but he is not the next Imam Ma'soom. Funny thing enough, Ismail, the son of Imam al-Sadiq, died in the life of Imam al-Sadiq. How is he the next Imam if he dies in the life of still the current Imam? That is why Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, as he was dying and leaving this world, the Khalifa al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi, who administered the poison and killed Imam al-Sadiq, he asked them and the governor by the name of Sulaiman in Medina, see who he left behind in his will. Let's get rid of him. He already lost his son Ismail. Who is the next in line? Stop him before it's too late. We don't want this authority to be inherited any longer, because there's a lot of power and it's potentially dangerous. Find who his Khalifa is. Harun Abu Mansur al-Diwaniqi is in Baghdad. He sends that message to Sulaiman, his governor in Medina. Sulaiman goes and sees the will of Imam al-Sadiq, and he sees that there are 5 names in his will who he left behind as his successor. Number 1 is his son Abdullah, his oldest son. Number 2 is his wife Hamida. Number 3 is Sulaiman himself, the governor. Number 4 is Al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi in Baghdad. Number 5 is Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam. He then reported back to Al-Mansur. He says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I cannot fulfill this will for you. He says, why? I need you to kill the next successor. He says, if I have to kill the next successor, I have to start with you. He says, what do you mean? He said, in the will, Ja'far al-Sadiq knew this was going to happen. Subhanallah, from the ilm Allah gives the Ahlul Bayt, watch out. He knew this was going to happen, put 5 names. And as a result, he protected the life of Imam Musa al-Kaظm alayhi salam. If he had just put his name, then they would have went after him. He put all of their names, and that's it. Imam al-Kaظm was protected in that situation. Imam Musa al-Kaظm alayhi salam, none come near him in akhlaq. Wallah, today, if you are a lover of Imam Musa al-Kaظm, but you have the worst of akhlaq, check your iman. Why? Because it is your Imam who showed the best of mannerism. One day, Imam Musa al-Kaظm alayhi salam was walking in Medina al-Munawwara with a number of his companions. As he was walking, a man on the road came and began to insult Imam Musa al-Kaظm. And he began to insult him and his father and Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. He began to do la'n and insulting him. You Rafidi, you this, you that. Your father is this, may you be attacked and be killed and may Allah punish you. Imam al-Kaظm has his companions. They said to him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, it's one man, we're going to beat him up right now. Allow us. Imam al-Kaظm said, no, don't do that. That is not how we treat others. I will not allow you to physically punish him. I'll take care of him. They thought maybe he was going to make a dua against him. I'll take care of him. The next day, Imam al-Kaظm visited his home. He lived in a farm, this man. As he was going, he was carrying with him a bag of money to gift him. Maybe he misheard something, maybe he had the wrong impression, let me change his mind. He goes to his farm, the man was farming, he sees it's him, the man I insulted yesterday, Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kaظm. He sees him, he says, stop, you're going to destroy my flowers and plants. What are you doing here? Imam al-Kaظm said, I'm not here to destroy your flowers and plants. I just want to apologize to you. Maybe you heard the wrong thing about us. Whatever the case may be, how much, I have a couple questions. How much these plants, how much did it cost you to plant them and take care of them? He says, it costs me 100 dinar. He says, how much do you believe you'll gain from the yield, from the product? How much do you think you'll benefit from it? He says, I don't know ilm al-ghayb. He says, I never asked you if you know ilm al-ghayb. I said, how much do you think you'll gain? He said, I should gain 200 dinar. Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam said, here is exactly 300 dinar for you. 100 to cover the cost of the labor you put, and 200 more dinar for the reward. You don't have to plant this here. This is a gift from me to you. The man immediately dropped down to his feet. He said to him, Allah a'lam hayth yaj'al risalata. Wallah, God knows where he puts his message. Forgive me, I didn't know any better. The next day, Imam al-Kaظm was walking on the streets of Medina with his same Ansar and companions. They saw this man coming and they were like, let's roll up our sleeves. Now he's going to get beaten up. He ran to Imam al-Kaظm and he immediately embraced him, hugged him, kissed him, said to him, Assalamu alayka ya Sayyidi wa Mawlai wa Mu'tamadi wa Rajai Musa al-Kaظm. Is there anything I can do for you? Do you need anything? فَأَنَا فِي خِدْمَتِكُمْ. They looked at each other, the companions, confused. What happened? Imam al-Kaظm said, see, is what you wanted to do better or what I wanted to do better? If you had just beat up the guy and attacked him, wallah, he would go away and never think about Islam ever again. But the way of us Ahlul Bayt is the way of akhlaq al-Muhammad. I guided him through mannerism. He didn't preach, he didn't do da'wah, he was just the best of person. He was the insanul kamil. And I brought him to Islam. That's how you inspire people. Of course, the moments that Imam al-Kaظm lived under the time of the Abbasid nation were still tumultuous moments, even when they were lax, because the Islamic golden age was there. You had the horrible rulers, Al-Mahdi al-Abbasi, then his successor Al-Hadi. An incident occurred in the life of Imam al-Kaظm. I'd like your attention here. One day, there was a man by the name of Hamid bin Qahtaba. Hamid ibn Qahtaba was a follower of Harun al-Rashid, and he called him to the court one day. Harun said to him, Ya Hamid, how much do you love me? Hamid said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I love you more than myself. Hamid said, that's not enough, Ya. The Khalifa said, that's not enough, Ya Hamid. I need more than that. He called him the next day. Ya Hamid, how much do you love me? Hamid looked at Harun al-Rashid and he said, I love you. I can give my own life for you and my own family for you. Khalifa said, that's not enough. I want more than that. He knew what he intended. He came the third day when he was summoned to the court. Harun al-Rashid said, Ya Hamid, how much do you love me? Hamid said, I will be willing to give my deen away for you. That's how much I love you, Ya Harun al-Rashid. He said, Ahsan, that's what I want, because I have a task. The following, you have to have la deen in order to do it. No iman, nothing in Allah. So what? He says, in the cell I will take you, there are 3 rooms. One room has 20 young men. That's it. The other one has 20 middle-aged men. The third one has 20 elderly men. All of them are from the line of Ali ibn Abi Talib, from the line of Banu Hashim. Many of them are Hassani Sada. Many of them are from the line of Imam al-Hussein. He says, go and take this sword and kill every single one of them. Hamid said, he goes inside the room, one by one, the room with the young Sayyids, all slaughtered. The second room, all slaughtered. The last one, he got to the last room, the elderly man from the line of Fatima and Ali, he turned around before he executed him and he said, what are you going to say when you meet my grandfather Rasulullah on the day of judgment? And he slaughtered him as well. This news reached Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam. Hamid bin Qahtaba one day was approached by his friend in Ramadan, and his friend saw him eating. He said, why are you eating? It's Ramadan. Are you sick? Because you don't have to fast if you're sick. He's like, I'm not sick. He's like, are you traveling? He's like, I'm not even traveling. Why are you eating and it's Ramadan? He said, what's the purpose of fasting? I'm going to hell anyways. Then he remembers the story. He says the story. There's no purpose. There's no hope in Allah anymore. Allah will just burn me. Imam al-Kaظm got news of this. Salawatullahi alayhi. He said, Wallah, his despair, listen to this, his despair in Allah's rahmah is a greater sin than the killings he did in the cell of Harun al-Rashid. How can you say there is no more hope when Allah is the hope of hopes? Their door of tawbah is always open. The fact that you said there's no more hope for me in Allah was a greater sin than even what you did, Ya Hamid. And this got word to Hamid bin Qahtaba. Imam al-Kaظm alayhi salam shows us that no matter what you do in life, Rabbul Alameen, from his names, Ya Ghafoor, Ya Tawwab. Is that not his name? If his own name is this, it shows you never lose hope. For when you lose hope, that is the biggest of all sins. Al-Ya's min Rawhillah. One day Imam al-Kaظim alayhi salam was walking through the streets of Medina, and he heard a home. Inside it, there was a lot of music and merrymaking. This issue with music has always been a big one in the communities. I've never been to a community, except across either America or Europe, except that in the Q&A session, this music question always has to be brought up. Halal, haram. Here's the rule, the basic rule. There's a haram nature of music. Avoid that ghina. Imam al-Kaظim heard it from a house coming. It's not from the akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt. He then approached the home and he inquired who the owner is in the house. One of the servants came out of the house. Imam al-Kaظim noticed that there was a lot of dancing and music, basically a club. Where? In Medina al-Munawwara. He saw the servant, they were taking out trash. He said to the servant, can I ask you, who owns this house? The servant said to Imam al-Kaظim, my master, it's a leader, I'm a slave to this man by the name of Bishr. He says, Bishr, is he a slave or is he a free person? He says, no, he's a free man. Imam al-Kaظim replied, of course he's free, because if he was a slave to Allah, he would never disobey Allah like this. The servant went inside and told Bishr what happened. There was a man out there, he said this about you. He asked if you were free or a slave. He thought in the context of slavery and ownership in that time period. I replied that no, you're a free man. Bishr said, what did he say then? He replied, of course he's free, because if he was a slave of Allah, he wouldn't be doing any of this. Bishr came outside of the house without his shoes. He forgot to put them on from how shocked he was from the reply he heard. He ran for Imam al-Kaظim, where is he who said this? And he was so distraught about his actions. He began to cry and he said, my master, forgive me. I needed that reminder. And Bishr became a scholar, by the way. There are Sufi sects, they call him Mawlana Bishr al-Hafi. Bishr, our leader, the barefooted one. He became a scholar just because of the reminders of Imam al-Kaظim alayhi salam. Look at this. He's being with good akhlaq here. He has beautiful reminders here. He's not forcing deen and down a person's throat, but through that way, he's guiding an entire ummah. And until today, he inspires us, brothers and sisters. Of course, the popularity became too much. Imam Musa al-Kaظim alayhi salam became too popular. And the Khalifa Harun al-Rashid got word and notice. What happened? In Medina, this shows you that from a good tree you can have one bad apple. Imam Musa al-Kaظim's nephew, Ali ibn Ismail bin Ja'far, his nephew, Ja'far al-Sadiq, of course, is who we're referring to. He gathered some of his stuff and he was about to leave to Baghdad. Imam al-Kaظim saw him. He said, my beloved nephew, Ali, where are you heading? He said, oh my uncle, I'm heading to Baghdad. I just am going to do business there. Ali bin Ismail was going to go to Harun al-Rashid and tell him that you have competition in Medina, take and get rid of Musa al-Kaظim. And he wanted to do that for money. He wanted to tip Harun al-Rashid and he would give him money as a result. Imam al-Kaظim knows what he's doing. He says, oh my beloved nephew, before you go where you're going, here, I will give you some money, keep it, and stay instead of going. He said, oh my beloved uncle, thank you for the money, but I still need to go. Imam al-Kaظim knows what he's doing, he's not admitting to it though. He says to him just one thing, Ittaqillah fi dami. Fear Allah for my blood. Ya Ali, you're my nephew. I know where you're really going. He says, no, uncle, I'm just gonna go do some business. He left. When he left, he got to Baghdad, he met up with the Khalifa. He says, Harun, I didn't know there were two khulafa in one ummah. He says, what do you mean, two khulafa? Yeah, you and my uncle Musa al-Kaظim. He's calling for war and he wants to fight you and he already has an army. Lie after lie after lie. If you want anything accomplished, get rid of him first. He's like, thank you. I will now gift you 300,000 dinar. 1 dinar is equivalent to 10 dirham. Dirham is silver, dinar is gold. 300,000 dinar times 10, that's the amount in darahim dirham. A lot of money basically. He says, Ahsant, 300,000 come in your direction. But wait, It takes a long time for 300,000 gold coins, back then it wasn't digital, gold coins to actually go your direction. Stay a night in Baghdad. Ali bin Ismail stayed a night. That night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inflicted him with a disease where basically his insides were coming out of his own body from how much he was puking his own blood. And that exact night, he died. He says, what was the purpose, honestly, of backstabbing Imam al-Kaظm salawatullahi alayhi for some money in this world here? I remember, by the way, there was if you've ever seen on YouTube social experiments where people go up to random people on the street and ask them questions. This was done in Tehran, by the way, I remember seeing, where they went to random streets in Tehran and they said to the people, what would you do if we were going to give you 300,000 US dollars, but one of them was clean, the other 299,999 were the rights of the people, it belonged to other people, basically stolen. Would you take it? They said, no, of course not, it's not mine. So they went to other people and I asked them the same question, but they brought the number down more and more. What would you do if half of it belonged to people and the other half is clean, but you don't know which half is which? So you can't take one and refuse the other. They said no, until they brought it down to the degree where they were like, what would you do if just $100,000 in 300,000 was not yours, mixed inside, and the rest was yours? Could you take it? Some of them said, yeah, of course I would take it. These people, they were told it was exactly 300,000 dinar that they sold the life of Imam Musa al-Kaظm. Don't be quick to take from the rights of people because of money. Umar ibn Sa'ad, what was he offered? Money, land. Ultimately, who's the Razzaq? Allah is. Don't gain rizq by disobedience of the Razzaq. It's not going to work in your favor. That's how he convinced Ali bin Ismail. As a result, Harun al-Rashid ordered Imam Musa al-Kaظm to be taken from his home straight to the city of Basra in Iraq. He got there and he was put in a house jail owned by one of the members of that establishment named Al-Fadl ibn Yahya. Al-Fadl ibn Yahya had a courthouse, and he one day invited his friend to look out to the yard. He says, what do you see? He says, I see a large pile of cloth on the floor. He says, that's not a pile of cloth. That's Musa al-Kaظm in the state of sujood. He's been like that for hours. He doesn't give up on sujood. Wallah, in the day, all he does is fast, and at night, all he does is pray. And they tell me, Harun says, beat him up, torture him. How can I do that when he's praying? At least stop praying. I can't do anything like that. It breaks my heart. You know what? I can't handle him in my jail. He sent a message to Harun, Ya Harun, get him out of my house. I can't handle this. Harun al-Rashid takes Imam al-Kaظm out from the jail of Al-Fadl ibn Yahya. By the way, he spent 3 years there. And the remaining years, this was the next 8 years. Many ahadith point, Imam al-Kaظm spent 11 torturous years in prison. The last 8 were the worst. This was in the jail cell of the man known as As-Sindi ibn Shahik in Baghdad today, where Imam al-Kaظm is buried, alayhi salam. As-Sindi's jail was a 3-level jail with a dungeon at the end. So it's like you go downstairs and downstairs and downstairs, there is a dungeon. In there, Imam al-Kaظm was stayed. He stayed for the next 8 years, salamullahi alayhi. He had a brother by the name of Ali bin Ja'far, Imam al-Kaظm's own brother. He would send him masail, fiqhiyya, jurisprudential rulings, and he would reply back to him, Imam al-Kaظm. He couldn't have guests, but he could get letters. Ali bin Ja'far would then compile this into a book. Today it's with us, it's called Musnad Ali bin Ja'far. All of the responses are from Imam al-Kaظm in fiqh. It's like a Minhaj al-Salihin. In it, look at the words. He doesn't call him Qala Musa ibn Ja'far, Qala al-Imam. He says Qala al-Shaykh, Qala al-Rajul. He can't say his name because if the authorities see that he's actually getting from him this information, he'll kill him and Imam al-Sadiq. So he has to say Qala al-Rajul, the man said, or Qala al-Shaykh. He cannot specify. But look at this, even in the prison, sharing and disseminating the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. One day Imam al-Kaظm, while he was in the jail, Harun al-Rashid realized that even he